There are many men in my life that I look up to. I have two grandfathers of the Windrush generation that came to this country in the 1940s and now in their 80s have comfortably retired. I have a father, funny, intelligent, and rich in wisdom. And sometimes when I'm in the presence of these men, I feel as if I'm in the presence of greatness. But sometimes when I look too long into these eyes, I see eyes full of pain and regret. I see the eyes of men that didn't completely break the cycles of abuse that they saw their fathers commit. I see men that claim that they would be radically different to the men that came before them, but sometimes, just sometimes, they find that they embody that which they once despised and it breaks them. I see eyes that speak volumes, but mouths that would never articulate the pain that they feel. Now, I speak of the men in my life, but really, my life is dominated by women. I come from a powerhouse of strong, fearless, passionate, and compassionate women. Two Caribbean immigrant grandmothers that work tirelessly for their families whilst continually overcoming the odds. A mother, the epitome of strength and resilience. 5 sisters, the dreams of our grandmothers, aunties and cousins whose wisdom remains the soundtrack to my life, and a niece, Disney Channel emoji obsessed, but with the heart of everything I could ever aspire to be. But 3 years ago, something very strange happened. In a South London hospital at about midnight, for the first time in a very long time, a little boy would enter our lives. What were we going to do with a boy? It was all very new for us, but we would have to deal with it as you do. And I remember when he was born, and I remember being transfixed, particularly by his eyes. Because when I looked into his eyes, I didn't see eyes full of pain and regret. I saw eyes that were blameless and held inordinate propensity for greatness. I saw eyes that could break cycles and redefine what masculinity meant for a new generation of men. Eyes that no longer had to be silenced. Eyes that could cry. And believe me, they would cry now. But how would they years down the line? Feminism. We've been told is about ridding our culture of sexist thinking in order to liberate women. So my nephew doesn't really come much into that conversation. But if we saw feminism as a means of freeing our culture from patriarchal thinking and domination, then the conversation would change. Narratives surrounding feminism have often focused solely on why women need feminism. We focused on individuals, a battle of men versus women, rather than a multifaceted system of patriarchy that too harms our brothers, fathers, and friends. Now, of course, women face the consequences of sexism in a very tangible way on a daily basis, and so it makes sense that we would be at the forefront of feminist movements and their attempts to end sexism. We face inequality in the workplace. We're discriminated against much within public policy, and a president can be elected into the so-called free world that espouses hate and violence towards us. It is imperative that feminism transforms and empowers women. But for me, realities of patriarchy are realities that affect us all. And revolutionary feminist thought is the understanding that being seriously committed to feminism means being seriously committed to ridding our culture of patriarchal thinking that harms both men and women. Because from an early age, boys are taught that they must perform masculinity in a hegemonic manner or their chance of social survival is slim. They are taught that they must be tough, and consequently, when they feel weak, they must perform strength. When they feel inadequate, they must perform confidence. And when they feel emotional, they must only ever perform anger. So in 2014, when Emma Watson became the bastion for modern feminism, claiming he for she was the mode in which we needed to adopt a new feminism, I feel as if the point failed to grasp the entirety of the situation we currently face. The campaign argued that men and boys should be encouraged to take action against negative inequalities faced by women and girls in order to be agents of feminist change. In other words, men should be allies. But how can we ask men to just be allies when they are too victimized by the same system? How can we ask men to be allies in a war that leaves them 21 times more likely to be imprisoned because they're taught to be violent? 4 times more likely to commit suicide because they're taught to be silent, and they're least likely to ask for help both physically and mentally because they're taught to be strong. Now, much of the performance surrounding masculinity is rooted in men not being able to express how they feel in the same way that women can. And so, when I talk of a radical and a revolutionary feminism, I talk of our feminism that understands the importance of ridding patriarchal culture in men for men. A feminism that understands the importance of spaces where men can engage in dialogue that patriarchal culture doesn't permit, where they can talk about their worries, their interpersonal relationships, and their personal growth so that cycles of pain and regret can be broken. At midnight, when my beautiful nephew entered this world, I asked myself, how will a young black boy from South London engage in a dialogue that encourages him to think critically about masculinity, that inspires him to question pre-existing notions of what it means to be a man and to get to grips with the entirety of who he is as an individual by exploring a plethora of his emotions? Feminism, we've been told, looks like this, this, and this. But what if I told you that radical and revolutionary feminism was taking place right now, and it looks more like this, this, and this? In 2016, this grime artist Cadet released a song which I consider to be one of the most radical and revolutionary feminist projects of the year, Letter to Crept. The song outlines a relationship between himself and his cousin, another famous rapper, Crept. In the song, he outlines his fragmented relationship with his cousin and discusses how constant comparison to his cousin has caused him much pain. He publicly voices troubles he has had within his family relationship and outlines mechanisms for healing. He finishes the song by telling his cousin that he loves him and reverses the narrative of what male, particularly black male relationships are supposed to look like. Cadet subverts the notion that grime is hyper-masculine in more ways than one and shows how rap can be used to subvert particular discourse within popular culture music. If that wasn't legendary enough, his cousin released a song replying, telling his side of the story. For me, the two rappers indicated what healing patriarchal discourse in the public square can look like. Rap. A culture that foreign eyes have often dubbed as hyper-masculine has provided a space where two men can engage in healing dialogue. And this song doesn't stand in isolation. It is true to say that rap provides an outlet, whatever that outlet may be. And feminist thinking has always understood the importance of outlets. Black feminists in the 1960s, in deviating from mainstream feminism, became increasingly concerned with creating narratives that express their lives and their realities. And it is true to say that from such a generation, we saw some of the best literature a generation ever saw, from the likes of Maya Angelou to Bell Hooks and Toni Morrison. Rap continues that legacy. This is a genre of music that expresses the complexities and realities of modern urban life. It has provided an outlet of emotion and a successful means of getting men to engage in issues that affect their lives and their communities. And yes, it is true to say there is that rap music which embodies that which we wouldn't consider to represent feminist ideals. However, it is dangerous to observe these realities within a cultural vacuum. If rap is patriarchal, capitalist, and misogynist, surely it's because it reflects a world that is equally, if not more so, patriarchal, capitalist, and misogynist, and not because these are concepts that have been created by this culture. Rap is indeed a culture, and it is diverse, and it speaks many different languages, and far too often we've only been told of one of those languages that it speaks. And so the argument that rap embodies all these evils is ill-informed, short-sighted, and a narrative that too often we have heard. But what if we flip the narrative? What if we saw rap differently? If we saw it as a mode in which men have been able to discuss their emotions in a vulnerable and fragile way? Men who have been told that their emotions aren't valuable find a space where such value is given. And in a society where a growing number of men, particularly black men, are suffering from mental health problems as a result of this lack of communication, this mode of dialogue should be celebrated as revolutionary and not evil and backwards. Bell Hooks famously said that the soul of feminist politics is the commitment to ending patriarchal domination over the lives of men and women, boys and girls, and it is here where we will see freedom. Our happiness, our existence is predicated upon the fullness in which we can live. And if men were able to live in that fullness, free from patriarchal domination over their lives, our realities would change. We would see a cultural revolution. For far too long, mainstream feminism has critiqued a genre of music that may be the closest thing to radical feminism we have ever seen. Because feminism wants to heal patriarchal destruction. And rap has and continues to provide a means of dealing with some of that destruction. Rap and feminism can be best friends. They just need to look at each other with a new set of eyes. Because we're living in a world where hearts stop beating and eyes start closing every single day because of the realities of patriarchy. But we need to live in a world where eyes can live, heal, and transform. Because the man them need feminism. And my nephew and little boys across the world need eyes that glisten with hope so that they, their sons, and their grandsons can live fuller lives. Thank you.